if you don't want this to happen, if you want to see a change in the state of Indiana, get your hiney down to the State House and start testifying at committee hearings in the state of Indiana.
Yes. Platforming.
Then, and only then, am I willing to have you come out and say anything against the state legislature. Because if you ain't been involved, I don't want to hear nothing from you.
So what we're talking about this evening is War on Farmers, War on Food. We've got an event coming up January 9th. It's Tuesday at 11 a.m. We need you out at the State House to talk about this. It's not the speakers that we're going to have down there. It's you getting involved in your government. That's one of my tasks that I'm doing is you speaking to your legislators, you talking to your elected servants. You know, many times we elect them, we send them down there, and we say, hey, thanks for being our elected official. We never talk to them again until they run for office, whether they're a senator 4 years later, whether they're a rep, and we talk to them 2 years later, or county commissioner, county sheriff. We never talk to them. We never communicate with them. When I was out in Washington State, a person got elected as a city council member and then became the mayor of the town that I was in with a massive vote of 72 people.
Wow.
In a town of over 5,000 people. Folks, we need to be involved.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I'm talking about. Is us communicating, us having an open discourse with our elected servants there. As I was out Washington State in the early part of December, I saw this sign there on North Nevada Street. It said it this way: think globally, eat veganly. I don't have a problem with you eating veganly. You can do you and I'll do vegan. I'm going to eat some meat. But I thought it was very interesting is it says meat and dairy cause climate change. I guess it's the cow farts. I apologize. Somebody nice was in the United States Marine Corps. You're going to see that here in just a little bit. So I may be a little blunt, but I think you'll be able to handle it. Maybe it's the cow farts because it's the methane out of the cow farts, because methane is made out of 1 part carbon, 4 parts hydrogen, and that makes methane. But it's not cows that are the only ones that produce methane. We're going to see a video on that here in just a little bit. But I want to show you a video here. It kind of tells you a little bit about what's going on here, something you need to know about. How are they going about taking over our land? So I wanted to show you this video from Facts and Act.
Approximately 30 years ago, the United Nations implemented something called Agenda 21, which is essentially their master plan for humanity, the agenda for the 21st century. And this 100-year-long agenda of theirs, it's broken down into shorter 15-year-long segments. The first 15-year plan was called Agenda 2015, or the Millennium Development Goals. And then currently, we are living in the second 15-year plan, the so-called Agenda 2030, which, at least according to UN documents, is the agenda to transform our world for quote-unquote sustainable development. And unbeknownst to many, many people, for the past 10 or so odd years now, this broad agenda from the United Nations has been trickling down, getting implemented as concrete policies right here in America. And so using things like the Endangered Species Act, WOTUS, the Waters of the U.S. Act, the Antiquities Act, as well as quite literally billions of dollars in federal money to either buy up land or to convince landowners to place conservation easements on their land, so it's technically still private, but you're just not allowed to develop it. Using all these different methods, the government has been taking land out of production in order to supposedly, well, save the planet. This is all part of the Biden administration's broad plan to place 30% of America's land and put it completely out of production by the year 2030. This would mean that 30% of the land would be placed into federal conservation, and it would essentially be idle. There would be no grazing, there would be no farming, no drilling, there would be no fishing, no developing, basically just no human involvement.
So if you have land that is fertile farmland and you put it into conservation, at what point is the inflection point when you have too little land that is in production that you don't have enough food for us to be able to eat? When I got here, I got a little hungry. I think I'm the poster child for the Snickers bar. You've watched the Snickers commercial. If you don't eat, you get hangry. So I went over there to the snack bar and bought me a Snickers, so that way I wasn't hangry. Because he said he wanted to have civil discourse this evening. So I figured that the guy speaking should have some civil discourse and not be hangry. So I ate a Snickers bar. My question is it 30% or is it at 50%? Because it's not just Agenda 3030. They also have Agenda 5050. You say, John, you lost me. You seem like a really nice guy. Looks like you know how to dress up a little bit. You got a Banana Republic shirt on. You got a nice purple shirt on. It looks pretty nice. But when you said agenda, I've been told that's a conspiracy.
Well, let me tell you, there's a lot of things that have been called conspiracy theory, but it's like we're running out of conspiracy theories because seemingly a lot of them are coming true. What I'm talking about is primary source documentation, and that's what I'm going to be bringing to you this evening is primary source documentation. And I like having the people that they themselves say it, so then you can't say that I said it. You heard it straight from them. That's why I need you down at the State House. Oh, by the way, we got to do the legal jargon. I'm a former cop, so I have a love-hate relationship with lawyers. Do you know why Washington, D.C. has more lawyers than New Jersey has toxic waste dumps? Anybody know? New Jersey got first choice. But we have to do the legal jargon here. All in videos included is this presentation for the illustrative purposes of myself. The presenter presentation of videos, and this presentation is for educational purposes. No videos of this presentation, streaming of this presentation is allowed. Does that mean I'm going to come slap your camera out of your hand? No, this is a free world. But I can tell you that I said this. How many of you heard me say legal jargon? Fantastic. Look, we're getting places. That's fantastic. Freedom and property rights are inseparable. You can't have one without the other. I know I'm going to tear a Band-Aid off, and you're probably going to hate me, and we're going to have to do some intervention. But I want to take you back to 2020. Remember that time when they decided that they were going to shut down the state of Indiana because they said that there was this virus going around? They said we can't have church on Easter Sunday. Remember that? Mm-hmm. That was freedom that we were fighting for. Well, let me liken it up to you this way. When we were fighting for freedom, we were actually fighting for property rights at the same time. Tonight, we're talking about property rights. What property rights do you have? So we're actually fighting for freedom at the same time. So when you're fighting for freedom, you're fighting for property rights. When you're fighting for property rights, you're fighting for freedom. You see what we're talking about here when we can't separate freedom and property rights. If you fight for one, you're fighting for the other. You can't have one if you don't have the other. A little bit about me. I'm married to the love of my life, Elizabeth. We've got 10 kids: Stephen, Hannah, Abigail, Matthew, Grace, James, Rebecca, Lydia, Melody, and Titus. You're like, holy cow. The guy's got 10 kids. Yes, I knew what houses he has. I knew have a hobby. I heard them all. But you're sitting there going, this guy's like one heck of a dad. He knows all of his kids' names. You have no idea. I could have just named out about 10. You were like pretty impressed. I appreciate you doing that. Born in Fountain County, Indiana, raised in Covington, United States Marine Corps veteran, also a former police officer, also a former pastor in the state of Washington, started a church there, pastored a church in North Carolina as well as Tennessee. Not actively pastoring at this point, but I am an ordained minister. What we're talking about is a global agenda with hometown effects. You're like, global agenda, John. Man, I appreciate your service to the United States Marine Corps. You know, muscles are required, intelligence never expected. That's what my best acronym for the Marine name there. But, you know, John, global agenda. That conspiracy theory thing comes back in my mind, and you're losing me. This is just craziness. I mean, I appreciate you coming out this evening, but you're talking this is just, it's a bridge too far. Well, this is a global agenda. You say, well, it can't happen here. We're here in Indiana. We've got the trifecta. We've got a Republican House, Republican Senate, and we've got a Republican governor. All those crazy things happen in Democrat-held states. You go over to that state of Illinois, that crazy kook over there, that governor, he's a nut. Did you know him and his brother, they invested $3 billion in order to create a prosthetic uterus? I'm not joking. They really did. $3 billion. You know why? They wanted to make sure that men could bear children. My 15-year-old daughter, Hannah. Those were my kids' names, by the way. My 15-year-old Hannah, she goes, Dad, where's the baby going to come out? I said, I don't know that they discussed that or not, but at least they will be able to bear children because they have a uterus. But we got some of the crazy stuff happening here in the state of Indiana. And I don't know that I'm blaming anybody in the state house or the state senate or the state governor's office, but what I'm telling you is we've got some hometown effects here in the state of Indiana that we need to be aware of. But more important than that, we need to be able to do something about it. How can I do something about it? So I decided what I was going to do. Straight, I wanted you to hear from the first person. I mentioned Washington State. We have Senator Patty Murray from Washington, and I decided for you to be able to hear straight from the horse's mouth. And some of them might be from the other end of the horse, but I wanted you to hear straight from the horse's mouth what their plan is in order to going forward in the legislative office.
Talk about the legislative priorities for the Senate under your leadership as well as Chuck Schumer. What is it that you want to prioritize?
I think one of the main things we want to prioritize is one of the few things we were not able to get done in the last session of Congress, which is to address the issue of childcare. That is such a barrier to so many families who are trying to go to work every day. To make sure that we are investing in what our country needs for families who are trying to work their way back, our kids get their education on track, make sure people can afford higher education and job training, and really to continue to invest in climate change. These are the issues the American public want us to address and the ones we will be focused on.
These are the three things that she wants you to know that they are going to be investing in. How many of you say that lines up exactly? That's what the top three things that I want the U.S. Senate, the U.S. House, the Indiana, all the state legislators across the United States, all 50 states, that's what they need to focus on in fixing. Anybody? I've not had anybody yet. Gone around multiple counties, I've had multiple meetings across the state of Indiana and other states, and people bring up other issues. They say there's some more important issues that we would like them to address, but we're not going to talk about that. What I want to focus in is on the fact of the three words that she said was investing in climate change. Three words there. When I think about the word investing, I go back to my days when I was a teenager and we were selling cinnamon rolls there in Covington, Indiana. And my parents taught me about investing. You have to, it takes money to make money. It's an investment. So we were making cinnamon rolls. We had to buy brown sugar. We had to buy cinnamon. We had to buy sugar. We had to buy flour. We had to buy yeast. We had to buy all the ingredients. We had to buy a pan. We had to, have a place to sell it. We had to go and market it. We had to go and, go to the local Medline industry there that they did the sewing factory. And we had to have people in order to buy what we were investing in. We were making a business. I wonder if it was a Freudian slip that she had there of saying the word investing. I'm going to put that in the back of your mind. Yes, I'm dropping a little Easter eggs along the way for you to be able to start thinking on, mulling over, and you're going to chew on the cud as the cows do. I love, analogies like that. You can think on this thing, but then I want you to go to the word climate change, or the two words, words, climate change, but maybe it self-identifies as one word, even though it's two words, but we can talk about that later. It's with climate change. We all know what climate change is, don't we? I mean, we're supposed to be afraid. The Earth. I can't remember. It was 1970. Is it getting colder or is it getting hotter? Which one is it? In the 70s, we were all going to freeze. In the 80s and 90s, we were all getting too hot. And now we're marketing it as climate change. Climate change. I need to get like a sound effects. You know what I'm saying? It's like a boogeyman out. Climate change. Well, where does it come from? Well, according to the documentation, it comes from Agenda 21, 2030. You're like, that didn't happen. I watched it on my favorite news channel. There's no such thing as 2130. Well, what's strange is they had a Rio de Janeiro event in Brazil, and they adopted Agenda 21 in 1992, signed in by George H.W. Bush. We got all the documentation. You say that's bogus. Well, then I guess their website's bogus. Happens to be a GOV website, but I guess our government's bogus. It affects every area of humanity, has global impact, local enforcement. This is all of their wording. It's not my wording. This is their wording. And I said about the other end of the horse, you get where I'm going. Let's listen to Bill Gates, and we can hear from him. What's Bill Gates has to say?
Everything in the economy. I mean, every aspect.
Yeah, so what we can say right now,
of us sitting around here, what specifically would be impacted?
well, this cement would be made in a different way. The steel of the building would be different. The meat and the burgers, a big deal. These, all this plastic and paper, potatoes.
Potatoes, you're talking about fertilizer, the irrigation system that's used.
All the tractors, the transport.
Or trucks that bring them to this restaurant. All that has to change.
Hey, when you're going to zero, you don't get to skip anything.
I don't need to go to zero. Because you don't understand is they're indoctrinating their children in our local schools, and they use videos just like this. It explains to them why we need to go to zero, why we need to change every area of humanity. The potatoes, the water, the fertilizer, the paper, everything. We have to change Why? Check out this video. This explains to you what our children are hearing, what they're being indoctrinated with. Listen.
Our planet, my friends, is a little sick. Due to gases that accumulate in the atmosphere and that are causing the temperature of the Earth to rise, as if it had a fever. And this, in turn, causes droughts, floods, frosts, and more catastrophes in different parts of the world. Watch the entire video and learn about climate change and how, with simple actions, we can help our planet. Welcome to the Farm Call for Kids! Hello, friends! Climate change is the long-term increase in the average temperature of the atmosphere, which is caused by the excess of greenhouse gases caused by different activities that human beings carry out on a daily basis. The first thing you should know is that these types of gases are produced both by nature itself and by man. However, people, we have not controlled the amount of these gases that we produce. And no, I'm not talking about the gas that sometimes comes out after eating. I'm going to tell you which are those greenhouse gases that pollute. Carbon dioxide, produced by smoke from cars, smoke from factories, and deforestation, which is when the trees in our forests are burned excessively.
Causing.
Methane, produced.
All right, that's about all I can take it out. Hold on a second. They actually went there. They went and used that little yellow thing, had the farting sound out of it. Sorry. The flatulence sound for those of us that are a little sensitive on that topic. And they said, we're not talking about that, but then they said methane. It's actually pronounced methane, not methane, so maybe we can call the producer of this and help them understand methane. That sound is methane. But they said we're not talking about that. So which is it? Are they sorely misinformed or are they lying to us? They're like, John, well, we can't be. And then they said carbon dioxide. Remember back in school when we were supposed to be paying attention, those of us that are guys, and we were trying to flirt with the little girl, that was in front of us, three chairs in front of us. And I can tell you, nothing says love quite like having a spitball blown in the back of your neck. I mean, that's how brilliant we were as 13-year-olds. Man, when I found out that there was boba tea straws, you could get a bigger spit wad into that boba tea, and you could really blow onto the back of your neck. And you could tell. But what they were trying to tell us was about this crazy thing called photosynthesis. You're like, photosynthesis? What's that? It's a Scrabble word. You are going to be able to win Scrabble this year, this winter, in the cold days. I'm going to give you so many words that you're going to win Scrabble. We've got quasi coming up, QUASI. It's going to be wonderful. You're going to finally be able to win Scrabble. Use that Q tile on the triple letter score. You're going to do wonderfully. Photosynthesis takes 6 parts water, 6 parts carbon dioxide, plus radiant sunlight, plus some little magic that God did in creating the plants, and he gives us 1 molecule of glucose. Plus it belches out 6 parts of O2. Or as I think of it, from Fountain County, Indiana, I breathe out carbon dioxide, the tree breathes in carbon dioxide, does its little magic. It breathes out oxygen, O2, that I breathe in, which feeds me, and I then breathe out the carbon dioxide, which feeds it, and it feeds me, and me feeds it, and it feeds you. Gets my drift. And they're calling it a pollutant. And you wonder why I go and stick it to them about methane. They're saying is that what God created is not good enough. We're playing God again.
Mm-hmm.
You're like, but John, we're at a gastric level of carbon dioxide. You have no idea how hot we are. Are we? You're going to see about that here in just a little bit. How high are we? How crazily insane are we? We'll discuss that in a little bit. And what they're going after, remember that sign from Spokane, Washington? Is that meat and dairy cause climate change. But I would tell you, if methane, to use their term, is what they're after, what else produces methane? I tell you that no farmers, no food. If we take away carbon dioxide, we're not gonna have food. Yet the Institute for Chemical Technology off of their PowerPoint, these learned people, state I blew it up so that we could see it a little bit better, says that less CO2 means a healthier environment. They say that they're wanting a greener earth. How much CO2 can we take out of the air before the plants die? That's what we have here is a war on carbon. What is happening is they have declared war on carbon. They have declared it to be public enemy number one, persona non grata. These are the things that they are fighting against. That's why we have to have wind turbines, because we have to get away from coal-fired plants, fossil fuels. That's why we have to have electric vehicles, because we have to get away from fossil fuels. That's why we have to have solar panels, because we have to get away from fossil fuels. Why do we have to get away from fossil fuels? Because of carbon. Because carbon has been declared public enemy number one. Now, back to Bill Gates. Let's listen to him.
Every aspect of modern life, manufacturing, agriculture, transportation, because nearly everything we now do releases earth-warming greenhouse gases, mainly carbon dioxide, into the atmosphere.
So if we're releasing carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, what it actually feeds our plants. Studies show us over and over and over and over and over again is the more that we have carbon dioxide, the better the plants grow. But they've declared it to be a pollutant. How many of you ever watched the movie Idiocracy? Ever watched the movie Idiocracy? Absolutely wonderful movie. So I needed to describe this. What is circular reasoning? I thought about making a wonderful little diagram, have spinning circles, and, taking you through the OODA loop, and we never get out of it, type of thing. And I thought about this clip, and it's like we're living it here in 2024. What happened here is he committed a crime. He's now in prison. He's got to solve a problem in order to get out of it, and they're having a problem. Their crops are growing. It's a major problem. Listen in as they discuss the problem that they have.
Is that Bravo stuff? They're watering crops with a sports drink?
Rondo the Thirst Mutilator had come to replace water virtually everywhere. Water, the basic component of all life, had been deemed a threat to Rondo's profit margin. The solution came during the budget crisis of 2330, when the Rondo Corporation simply bought the FDA and the FCC, enabling them to say, do, and sell anything they wanted. Joe didn't know any of this, but he did see a problem that he might actually be able to solve. With his options running out, Joe took a bold step. He would not get out of the way. This time, he would lead.
For the last time, I'm pretty sure what's killing the crops is this Rondo stuff.
But Rondo's got what plants crave. It's got electrolytes.
So wait a minute, what you're saying is that you want us to put water on the crops?
Yes.
Water? Like out the toilet?
Well, I mean, it doesn't have to be out of the toilet, but yeah, that's the idea.
But Rondo's got what plants crave.
It's got electrolytes.
Okay, look. The plants aren't growing, so I'm pretty sure that the Rondo's not working. Now, I'm no botanist, but I do know that if you put water on plants, they grow.
Well, I've never seen no plants grow in no toilet.
Hey, that's good. You sure you want the smartest guy in the world?
Okay, look, you want to solve this problem. I want to get my garden, so why don't we just try it, okay? And not worry about what plants crave.
Rondo's got what plants crave.
Yeah, it's got electrolytes.
What are electrolytes? Do you even know? It's what
They used to make Rondo.
Yeah, but why do they use them to make Rondo?
Because Rondo's electrolytes.
Why do I need to get rid of carbon dioxide? Because it's a pollutant. Why is it a pollutant? How do we answer that question? Back to the agenda. Let's hear from Bill Gates. How long have we been doing these SDGs, Sustainable Development Goals? There's 17 of them. It's on the UN website. I'm going to be showing you that here in just a little bit. But let's listen to Bill describe to you about their goals that they're going towards.
It's kind of special here because the foundation is now 15 years old. And also this year, we have the UN looking at the Millennium Development Goals, which were the world powers from 1990 to 2015, and adopting the next 15 years of goals. So what can we get done by 2030? So we pick health, education, farming and banking, and say, we think some very dramatic things can happen.
Health, education, farming, and banking. Those are the 4 areas that Bill wants to tackle. Interesting. Health, education, farming, and banking.
That's what they're doing.
Bill's pushing a lot of this. There's other people pushing it, but Bill's one of the #1 backers of this, Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. And I want to take you on just a little rabbit trail. When Bill talks about banking, let's see what Bill has to say about banking. You say, John, this isn't real. Okay. Right off the Princeton.edu website. Again, I don't know. It's publicly available information, just not publicly known. Primary source documentation. This is what they talk about for the social credit system that Bill's for. What is he talking about? Well, what's going on here is when a person engages in a trust-breaking behavior, the name of the social credit code of the individual will be published on the online blacklist along with details about the deed and the following legal sanctions. The trust-keeping equivalents will be announced on the online red list. How many of you have heard of central bank digital currency, CBDCs? Anybody heard about that? It should be highly concerning to you. Because if you don't have the Benjamin, or for me, the Washington in my pocket, they can't take the Washington away. But they could turn off your digital currency with the flip of a switch. Because banks are not necessary. Banking is. That's kind of stuff the bill is. The Sustainable Development Goals, there's 17 of them. You see it there, you're like, John, Sustainable Development Goals, it's not real. I was told on my favorite news channel, I was told by my favorite politician, is that they said that this isn't real. People that espouse this are conspiracy theorists, and we know how you are, except it's off the UN.org website. This is their Sustainable Development Goals. All 17 of them. Well, which ones is Bill for?
To track and accelerate the progress of these goals across the globe is the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation's annual Goalkeepers event, which kicks off in this room filled with leaders from around the world and individuals with a common interest in achieving the global goals.
The Bill and Melinda Gates is all for all 17 of them. So I ask you this question. We're going to get to it. We're going to talk about this in just a second. But I take you to number 6. It says clean water and sanitation. Right off the UN website. Clean water and sanitation. If I go and take carbon dioxide and I inject it in the ground, I create carbonic acid when it hits water. Plants don't grow off carbonic acid. It pollutes the water. Oh, by the way, they're going for the Mount Simon sandstone geologic structure, some 3,000 to 5,000 feet below our feet. And one of the #1 ways in order to dissolve sandstone, wait for it, is acid. But therefore, for clean water and sanitation, because they're saying is they're operating under affordable and clean energy, they've got to take carbon dioxide out of the air because it's a pollutant. So we have an emergency over here. So do we ignore number 6? What's going on here? We have to ask ourselves this question. Banking, healthcare, farming, and education. I find it strange that this is a quote from Bill. Common Core is a big win for education. I wonder if that's where they're getting some of this nonsense into our kids. Instead of teaching them how to read and write, how do we have single digits of reading in the state of Indiana? Makes me wonder what's going on with Common Core. Anyways, I also want to talk about what is the UN doing about the faith sector. Listen in what their idea is for the faith sector. I'm talking about pastors, churches. Here's their idea.
We all believe that we are here for a purpose, to live on this earth and leave it as we received it. We are here at the UN Environment Assembly, bringing 135 faith leaders representing 12 faiths to discuss through our Faith for Earth initiative the connection between science and religion. And at the end of the day, we all agree that we have one common cause, living in harmony with our environment.
So their idea is they're going to push the UN Sustainable Development Goals upon preachers, upon pastors, upon parishioners, upon everybody, because the faith sector is quite a large sector, because they have a lot of people that go to church. I don't remember exactly the statistic, I couldn't step into the video anymore. And they're going and polluting, pun intended, the churches. They're causing churches to now espouse this stuff. Even though Genesis chapter 1 states that the herb yielding forth its seed, the tree yielding forth the fruit, but the seed inside the self, I introduce you to photosynthesis again. You can't have fruit without photosynthesis. But we can take carbon dioxide out of the air, and we call that Christianity. Faith for earth, finish. Something's not right. You smell that? It smells fishy now, doesn't it? Yet, last you learn is what they say and what they do are two totally different things. Then I bring it to the Paris Climate Accord because the Paris Climate Agreement, or whatever you want to call it, and I was told, somebody told me it's not a legally binding contract. They said, John, it was just a couple of gentlemen that got together in Paris, and they decided that they were going to, get together, and they were sipping coffee, and they were just deciding we would love to see something meaningful done for our environment, because I don't want to see trash along I-69. I don't want to see trash there on the loop of 465 in Indianapolis. How many of you want to see, styrofoam cups littering the side area there along the fields? Me either. But then you go to the UN website and you read the Paris Agreement is a legally binding international treaty on climate change. But John, I don't remember it ever being ratified by the U.S. Senate. The Constitution says that all treaties have to be ratified by the U.S. Senate. What's going on with this? Went to the World Economic Forum website. Even a broke clock gets it right twice a day. Definitely not a World Economic Forum guy. I'll talk about that here in a little bit. But they described what they did. Is the Paris Climate Agreement legally binding? Here we go. Let's read what they have to say. Instead, treaty negotiators made a clever concession. They chose to make the treaty's required processes legally binding, not the obligation to meet the prescribed goals. I was like, hold on here. This Fountain County boy is getting a little bit confused.
Yeah.
What's going on here? So instead of it having being climate change, let's make ice cream. How many of you like ice cream? You know what I'm talking about? Some warm apple pie with some vanilla bean ice cream. You know that recipe that you all have, that homemade ice cream recipe, grandma's recipe is the best recipe. We all say the same thing. She puts in 6 eggs. My grandma only puts in 5. You know the recipe. And so we require the process. We tell you what the ingredients are. We require you buy the ingredients from the correct place. We tell you which machine that you have to buy. We tell you how long you're supposed to stir it, how long you're supposed to have it in the freezer. We tell you how long all of the processes. How many of you would be shocked when you go and hit the lever on the ice cream machine, the ice cream would come out? Would that shock you? No, because we required all the things in order to get ice cream. Had they required the obligation to meet the goals, that, according to lawyers, would have had to been ratified by the U.S. Senate. They just made the processes legally binding, not the prescribed goals. Yet it shouldn't shock us that we're going to get the prescribed goals because they made these processes very narrow that we must follow. In 2011, in the Commonwealth of Kentucky, they decided that they were going to look into carbon sequestration. I talked to one senator there, and he used the term wildly expensive. He said it was going to be wildly expensive for them to get into carbon sequestration. What that carbon, there's that word again, sequestration. It's another travel word for you. It means burial of carbon inside the ground, for lack of a better way to describe it. They said it was going to be wildly expensive. When a senator tells you wildly expensive, you know that it's expensive. But never fear, we have the Inflation Reduction Act to the rescue. You're like, Inflation Reduction Act, what does that have to do with climate change? Well, it's like one of those bills, Paperwork Reduction Act of 1974. Before we had this much paperwork, and after it we had that much paperwork. You know, the Patriot Act of 2001, not very patriotic, had nothing to do with it. Or my personal favorite, the Affordable Health Care Act. You know, pay $300 a month for okay insurance. Now you're paying $1,200 a month for not really good insurance. You know what I'm talking about. Some ineptly named bills. Well, the Inflation Reduction Act, what it does for green energy, gives a ton of money, along with the infrastructure bill and other bills. But it also brings in dark money from across the world. Dark money, not here in the state of India. Oh yeah, dark money. Because one of the number one leading people here in the state of Indiana that are companies. Let me be more specific. Companies, state of Indiana is BP, British Petroleum. You do know who owns part of BP? BlackRock. Oh, that's right. Larry Fink sits on the World Economic Forum board. Larry Fink is the director of BlackRock. Some dark money. You're like, wow, that's crazy. It's even crazier. Remember how I talked about investing in climate change? I laid that little Easter egg at the very beginning. I hope your mind's been mulling over it. You're like, what in the world? What the heck is this preacher talking about? Well, here, listen in. This is directly from the Loans Program Office from the Department of Energy, the U.S. Department of Energy. Listen in.
So excited here at the Loan Programs Office about the Inflation Reduction Act. It provides us the resources to take all of this great technology that the Department of Energy has invented and perfected and let it cross the bridge to bankability to full commercialization.
Did you hear what I heard? Who designed this great energy stuff? Let me play it again for you.
So excited here at the Loan Programs Office about the Inflation Reduction Act. It provides us the resources to take all of this great technology that the Department of Energy has invented and perfected.
Who invented this technology?
I didn't hear.
Department of Energy did. I don't know, unless he's lying to me. I'm not trying to tell you this. What he said, did this go through the vetting process? I mean, did legal check this in order to make sure? I mean, I don't know. Let's remember how government makes money. Anybody remember how government makes money? Anybody?
Rent it.
How is that? They make it from us. So they used our money in order to create this technology. Quote unquote, according to the Kentucky State Senator, he called it wildly expensive in 2011. So they took our money to develop this technology, and now they're selling it back to us for us to pay them again. You catch where we're headed? Well, what kind of technology are we talking about? We must be thinking about stuff that's really great idea.
And we also have the CO2 pipeline authority, where we can actually build CO2 pipelines across the country.
They're talking about CO2 pipelines. They're talking about carbon sequestration. They talk about solar energy. They talk about all of the green energy deals they can do. Let's listen again to Bill. Kind of turns my stomach. I'm going to eat afterwards. That's why I always eat afterwards, because I listen to Bill. It makes me not hungry. Then I get hungry after I talk.
You've said that governments need to do the hard stuff, but not just go after the low-hanging fruit. What's low-hanging fruit?
Passenger cars, part of the electric generation with renewables, the things everybody knows about, that's getting almost all the money, not the hard parts, which is the industrial piece, including the steel and cement. Those pieces we've hardly started to work on.
So I tell you, you ain't seen nothing yet. They got more to do. That's why I'm sounding the alarm across Indiana, Kentucky, Illinois, and other areas, because we have even more coming. Because what we're talking about is from his book, How to Avoid a Climate Disaster. Maybe it's an inaptly named book, but I'm not for sure. It's hydrogen produced without emitting carbon. That's that blue hydrogen. Hashtag blue hydrogen that Indiana Economic Development Corporation is talking about. This is big money. The next time I hear that we're bringing economic development, we need to accept this stuff because of economic development, I think I'm going to puke in my mouth. We're supposed to take this nonsense and take it sitting down. And we're not supposed to fight for our farmland, our fertile farmland. it gets even worse. This is what they're talking about, this Mach 2 hydrogen that BP's trying to put in. So what they have to do in order to do this, when you create hydrogen, it naturally a byproduct, it is carbon dioxide. They have to capture it. That's what the point capture is over here on carbon capture, point capture. They put a hose, if you will, on top of the industrial process, and they take the carbon dioxide out before it's emitted into the air. They go and compress it, they get it to a supercritical state. They go and pipe it down the pipeline, and then they go and inject it into the ground 3,000 to 5,000 feet below the surface of your feet. It takes 1/2 pound of pressure to move something 1 foot below the surface of the earth. I did my rough math. I was home educated. I still have the twitch from it. It really has affected me in my public speaking ability. It's really nervous talking in front of you. Home education is not the way to go if you want your child to be, publicly speaking, as some people tell me. You can take that for what it's worth. That was a joke if you didn't catch it. And so what they do is it's 1/2 pound of pressure for every foot. At 5,000 feet, they have to be injecting it at least at 2,500 psi. But we have to get it out of the pipe, and we have to get it, because in the Mount Sinai and Sandstone geologic register, there's highly salinated water that's already there, and you have to be able to move it in order for it to get in there. What's the pressure gonna be? I have no idea, but it's gonna be pretty daggone high. That's just for hydrogen produced without emitting carbon. Why do we need to have that? Because we cannot have carbon fossil fuels, because they're pollutant. It's crazy the amount of pollution that we're emitting. We have farmers belching carbon into the air when they're driving their John Deere tractors. Because we all know that only John Deere is the way to go, because if you drive a case tractor, you're not going to heaven. That's what I think. But we also have here carbon capture. We have point capture and direct air capture. What in the heck is direct air capture? What is this stuff that they're talking about? You wonder, what is direct air capture? It's nothing. Just moving on. I was at the BP meeting up in several different places, 4 or 5 different places, and they mentioned point capture, how we're being global partners, how we're going about it. We're going to be embracing the environment. We're going to be embracing global innovation. We're talking about it, and then they go and speak in these words, direct air capture. Direct air capture. What's direct air capture? Well, it's right here in his book. And then 60 Minutes goes and talks about it for us and tells us what direct air capture is. Listen in.
This isn't just looking to cut future carbon emissions, he's also investing in direct air capture, an experimental process to remove existing CO2 from the atmosphere.
Did you catch what they just said? Direct air capture is to remove existing CO2 in the air. So not only are we going to keep it, point capture keeps us from being able to release it, from like the hydrogen hub or whatever it may be. We got a bunch of those coming in the state of Indiana because it's economic development. IEDG is just a wonderful corporation that's going to be helping us out in order to have economic development. It's going to be green energy. It's going to bring more jobs. Yay. And we're going to have direct air capture. Did you know that there's no state law to tell them of how many metric tons they can or can't take out of the air? Did you know that we will incentivize them federally in order to go in every metric ton, they will get a tax credit called a carbon credit if they suck CO2 out of the air? Then they get carbon credits in order to inject it into the ground to sequester it. When I was a cinnamon roll salesman, I tried to sell as many cinnamon rolls as I could humanly possibly sell, because I made money off of it. I wanted to sell as many as possible. Tons, no pun intended with metric tons. Tons if I could. And there's no law stopping it. Did you know there's no law on the books in that carbon pipeline? Because it's a class 6 pipeline. It's a different pipeline than natural gas or other pipeline because it's at such a pressurized point. It's not the same pressure as the natural gas or the propane or the other pipelines that are throughout. It's a different pipeline. And if it's less than 90% concentration of CO2, there's no regulation. When I was a cop, you had to learn to kind of think like a criminal. Not act like a criminal, think like a criminal. You have to think about, well, if they were going to go somewhere, if they were running out the back door, where might they go try to hide? You have to think like a criminal. All I have to do, and I would have no regulation if I made it 89.9% concentration. I wonder if I could find a way to dilute that thing 10.1% so I don't have regulations. It'd be cheaper. That's what I tried to figure out. I figured out as a young man of 13, 14 years old when I was making cinnamon rolls that if I bought a 5-pound bag of flour, it was more expensive as a 5-pound bag than a 25-pound bag per cup. I learned that, so I bought a 25-pound bag. It was cheaper for me, so I made more profit in the long run. So if I go and invest in a dilutant at 10.1% to bring it down to 89.9%, I don't have any regulations. The regulations cost me X amount and the dilutant costs me X amount. I wonder if the dilutant is cheaper than the regulations. You see where we're headed? And they're putting it into our ground. Like, but John, there's nothing to see. I mean, the EPA is definitely on top of this, and they would be sounding the whistle if this was the problem. They did. They are. Are we paying attention? Even off the EPA website, I'm definitely not an EPA flag-waving member, but they say the intrusion of CO2 or brine into underground sources of water happens if you have leakage through it. Release of CO2 in the atmosphere, the vadose zone, intrusion of CO2 into the buildings. Leakage of CO2 in groundwater could result in decreased pH, increased mineral dissolution, and possible release of metal and metalloid contaminants. It's right there. It's publicly available, just not publicly known and being publicly followed. Again, it kind of flies in the face of being conspiracy. Where are they headed? Tenaska. This is what Tenaska says. They're trying to go all throughout the state of Indiana. They're in Warren County right now. They're trying to get other places. This is also Tenaska website. It's not what I'm telling you. This is what they're telling us. Tenaska is trying to come to the state of Indiana. Here's ResearchGate. 40,000 something scientists that say that they are not neither Republican nor Democrat. They just like the facts. Thinking for the facts, nothing but the facts, so help me God. And they say that there's all sorts of places that can have problems with CO2, potential leakage pathways associated with geological CO2 storage, right off their website.
Did you see it says fault?
I mean, it's like we can't make it up. But when the allure of money, the Bible says the love of money is the root of all evil. And it seems like if we tell you that we're going to give you money, we have people line up. Why is that? $8 billion for this, $8 billion for that. They're giving away money like it's Skittles. I was just a couple of weeks ago, a private foundation gave over $1 billion into the Midwest in order to bring hydrogen hubs, in order to bring clean energy, in order to bring all of this stuff for solar panels, for wind turbines all across the state of Indiana and Illinois. $1 billion. They just write out a check of $1 billion. Sorry for me to write out a check for $263 to pay for the car payment. But they can write out a check for $1 billion. Where are they bringing carbon capture pipelines? Well, I introduced you to a couple of the maps right off their websites. We got 4 coming out of the state of Michigan, crisscrossing the state of Indiana. There are 3 coming out of Florida. We got some coming across from Illinois. Here's from another one that they were looking at bringing a major pipeline from here. They're coming out of Northwest Indiana. Oh, by the way, we have Vermilion, Vigo County right there. It's going to be Wabash Valley Resources, which is going to be claiming to be the nation's largest carbon sequestration point. Did I tell you that they're right on top of the Tage River Aquifer? Oh yeah, that, by the way, is one of the largest aquifers in the nation. It runs from Decatur, Illinois to West Virginia. And they're right on top of that. Tage River Aquifer. Put that in your mind, bookmark it. We're going to be talking about that here in just a little bit. Oh, here's all these solar farms. Some are projects, some are already producing solar farms. I find it very interesting that we call it a solar farm. You know the terminology that they use with it is the harvest they're getting off the solar farm. Are you ever living freaking kidding me? You're not harvesting nothing. That's what happens when you put a little corn seed in the ground and you let it sit for so many days, and you bring your combine in and you go and have it shelling, and you go and put it into the grain wagon, you take it down to the co-op and you sell it for, pennies on the dollar. That's a harvest. But they use terminology so loosey-goosey. It's a lot of land. We're going to come back to the land here in just a little bit, but I want to talk about land. Here's another problem, is this war on farmers for foreign-held agricultural land. This is from the Department of Agricultural report from December of 2020. It's their website. It's their information. You can argue with me. I had a person argue with me up at a different location. I can take it to their website. This is directly off their website. Foreign-held agricultural land to privately held agricultural land as of December 31st of 2020. Indiana, as of that date, is at 1.6 to 2.4%. Our friends to the north are at 2.4% or more, and our friends to the west at 2.4% or more. What does that translate in as far as acres? Indiana is at 250,000 to 500,000. Illinois, Michigan, Iowa, Wisconsin are out over 500,000 acres. I was talking to Congresswoman Mary Dillard from Illinois, and in first quarter of 2023, from her mouth to my ears, she stated is in central Illinois, 250,000 acres was sold to Communist Chinese Party in central Illinois. I think that's called war, my friends. You know, a lot of this stuff is owned in solar farms, is owned by the Communist Chinese Party. You know, the technology is Communist Chinese Party. The world, the U.S. will need a lot of land for a zero carbon economy, because we have to have a zero carbon economy. Because don't forget, it's the boogeyman. It's creating methane and carbon dioxide. We've got to get rid of all of this stuff because we've got global warming. Yeah, Oklahoma State University just recently came out with a study and said we're at a carbon dioxide critical point in the U.S. When plants turn on their little carbon on their photosynthesis machines, they click the switch on. They start burning away. The ambient CO2 levels in that area go down to 150 to 200 parts per million. One scientist says that plants die at 130 parts per million. The other scientist said 180 parts per million. If you're not figured out, I'm not a scientist. But I will take you, and I think you'd be willing to agree with me, and say that if it's 130, we're too darn close at 150. It's at 180, we're too darn close. What they went and studied is they said is that if we actually raise the carbon dioxide level to 800 parts per million, the plants recover. How many of you ever heard of hydroponics? You know what I'm talking about. Hydroponics, you grow plants inside buildings. What we have to do is we have to go put tape over all of the little exit points. We have to seal off the building. Then we go and get water. We stick the plants in the water. And all this other gobble we do. Did you know they go and they pump in CO2 in order to raise it into 800 to 1,000 parts per million in order to be able to grow the plants? CO2, carbon, is a friend to humans. It's the gas of life. Carbon dioxide is the gas of life. The U.S. will need a lot of land for a zero carbon economy. But you're giving up something because there's an emergency. We can't let a good emergency go to waste. It's something like that Rahm Emanuel said, former chief of staff for Obama and mayor of Chicago. Princeton University came out with a study, net zero study. It's kind of the gold standard. It's a place we all go to in order to find out what we need to do in order to get a zero carbon economy. And they stated this is how many acres that we need in Indiana in order to be able to have a zero carbon economy. Princeton University's Net Zero America Project. I bring you to the United States. How many of you
17
identify
million.
that as the United States?
I go to five that's United States. Yeah, you see Michigan right there, because you know a Michigander, from a mile away, like, where in Michigan do you live? You live here, you live here, you know what I'm talking about. You see Michigan right there. Well, directly below Michigan is the state of
Indiana.
Indiana, yeah, right here. Notice how many acres of additional solar farms they are requesting in the state of Indiana.
Oh,
17 million acres.
How many acres is that? 17 million acres? Are you ever living kidding me? We only have 23 million in the state of Indiana. Why do we need to take up over half? Nearly 3/4, if not exactly 3/4 of the land in solar farms. But we've been having this happen since 2000. We've had a loss of 50 million acres of agricultural land. What used to be row crops, premium crops, hog confinement, bovine confinement, chicken confinement, and it's now decreased. And we've lost 50 million acres since 2000, since the year 2000. Why? A lot of this is because we have to go to a zero carbon economy. I then bring you to the LEAP project. How many of you have heard of the LEAP? LEAP, Lebanon, Indiana. Remember that Taze River aquifer? They need a whole bunch of water for the LEAP project. I mean, I'm talking a ton of water. Like to the tune of 100 million gallons a day. Yep, I said 100 million gallons. You're like, in 10 days, that's 1 billion gallons. Yeah, you betcha. That means in a 30-day month, they're going to be pumping 3 billion gallons of water. Yep. Out of which aquifer? The Taze River aquifer. According to the hydrologist from Interra, which was made by the IEDC, hired Interra in order to be able to get them to do a study, he said, it's pretty amazing. They did the test back in, I believe, July, August timeframe earlier, 2023, mid-year 2023, give or take. Around that time frame, when they pumped 1 million gallons out, and I did my math on that, 1 million gallons is 1% of 100 million gallons. Okay. 1 million gallons they pumped out is 1% of what they're looking for. They said it dropped, X number of feet. Okay. They said the recharge rate was amazing. It's absolutely fantastical, the recharge rate, because they were getting water from other aquifers. From the alluvial, from the, I can't remember all the name of the aquifers. The guy was up in Lafayette, Indiana, was discussing it at a meeting there. And we had 420 something odd people there at a church in Lafayette. He said, it's coming from other aquifers. It's absolutely amazing. He said, the other aquifers are feeding in, and so it helps the recharge rate. And so that we know when we go and do the logarithm A plus B equals C divided by, we know that this will be able to hold, and they pump 3 days, 1 million gallons of water per day. That's what they told us, 1 million gallons each day. And the recharge rate is because the other aquifers are going and feeding in to that aquifer that they're in. It's amazing. This lady got up and introduced herself as a farm wife. She goes, hi, I'm a farm wife. I got a question. So the lady was a farm wife. That's why I call her that. The farm wife lady goes and asks a very important question. She said, aquifers are different sizes. He goes, that's correct. So the smaller aquifers have less water than the other, the larger aquifers. I'm like, man, I see where we're headed here. How quickly will we drain the smaller aquifers? And I kid you not, he said with a straight face, oh, we're only in one aquifer. Hold on a second. You're excited for the recharge rate that the other aquifers are feeding the aquifer you're in.
Mm-hmm.
And I get you. That helps the recharge rate. Aquifer A is feeding aquifer B, which is feeding aquifer C, and D, E, and F are feeding in as well. That's amazing. Well, aquifer E is the smallest aquifer. How quickly will we drain that aquifer? We're only in one aquifer. You're not catching the point. And we want to charge ahead with this program without doing our due diligence. Who is the IEDC? Who is the Indiana Economic Development Corporation? I submit to you, I go to their website, and they tell me that they're a quasi-state agency.
I looked up the word quasi, that Scrabble word that I told you, Quasi. I looked it up and it says seemingly, but not really. Welcome to the IEDC. Oh, I forgot to tell you about, they also have an IEDF. The Indiana Economic Development Foundation. They can accept money, and you can't have any oversight over it. You're like, no. Did you know that they were over in Dubai for COP28 and they were asking for other LEAP projects to come to the state of Indiana? We're being told that there's between 6 and 8 other LEAP projects wanting to come to the state of Indiana. And it's starting to make sense for me because when you watch the video, they have high-rise apartment complexes in their video. This is their rendering, not mine. If you put 17 million acres of solar panels, whose acreage are they taking up? Will you be able to live at your location? You're like, John, that's getting a little bit close to home. See where we're headed? You're like, it doesn't happen. Wait, I've got more to show you. But I also submit to you, if you go to their website, you can go to their website off their transparency portal, and you can go and search Boone County, Indiana, and you can find out that they gave $31.2 million to Next Level Manufacturing. No, I didn't write the stuff. It's their information. Like, I want to see the information on my computer. I haven't had a chance in order to put it on my slideshow. You want to see the information? I can take you to it. You can go to radicalpulpit.com. You can see the information. You can search it yourself. Who is Next Level Manufacturing? It's a former executive vice president of the IEDC. It's a current land use attorney for Bose, McKinney, and Evans, LLC. Oh, by the way, they're Bose Public Affairs Group that goes down and lobbies our state legislators at the state capitol. And it's a LLC. How many of you have an LLC to your name? So guess what? Whose money is that? They're handing money over. Our taxpayer, or is it private? But we can't know because it's a quasi-public agency, and even the Attorney General can't oversee vast majority of the IEDC. Did you know as we go and read the IEDC code, in the Indiana code, we go and read through it. Did you know that 3 people, the Indiana Finance Authority being the budget director, now the comptroller, they're going to be changing that. They have a technical direction bill, I believe it's Senate 35 that's coming up, that's going to be changing everything from auditor to comptroller. We just changed the auditor to comptroller. Current law states auditor of the state, but it's the new comptroller. And the treasurer of the state of Indiana formed the Indiana Finance Authority. Those 3 individuals can take any appropriation from any department, and that has a whole bunch of other things, that they can take the appropriation from any governmental agency, except for a trust fund. I think was the one exception they can't take it from, and they can give it to the IEDC. So let me put it this way. How many of you are back the blue kind of people? You know what I'm saying? You support the police. You know that, let's say the Indiana State Police has an aging fleet. I'm not saying they do. I'm just using this as a hypothesis. So we get together and we're like, we go and we citizen lobby all of our state legislators, and we're like, we really want you to this year, they have such an aging fleet. We want you to go and cut a check and make an appropriation. It has to start in the House because all appropriation bills have to start in the House. We want to follow all the rules, and we get a good representative to file the bill. We go through the committee, and we're going to go and replace all of the aging fleet, all cars of ISP. I don't know, I'm just using a number, $10 million. So we go to write out an appropriation, $10 million for ISP. Goes through the House, it goes through first reading to the committee, to second reading, to third reading. We get a resounding yes vote. We then have crossover day. We go over to the Senate. They assign it to the committee, and we have first reading of committee hearing. We have second reading. We then have third reading, and then it goes to the governor. We sign it into law. Man, we as back the blue people are excited because we finally got the appropriation in order to to get our aging fleet for our Indiana State Police, the boys and girls in blue that are defending our state, new vehicles because it's an aging fleet. These three individuals, according to state law, can take that appropriation and hand it over to the Indiana Economic Development Corporation. Why? Any appropriation. That's a big word. It's 3 letters. But in state law, the word any is a huge word. Massive. Plus, we have some work to do with the IC code that deals with the Indiana Economic Development Corporation. We need some oversight. This is who's bringing solar farms. This is who's bringing hydrogen hubs. This is who's bringing windmills. This is who's bringing carbon sequestration. They are the ones. Oh, by the way, IEDC is part of the International Economic Development Corporation. They're going to be coming during race weekend. They're going to have that another conference. They had back in 2019, I believe it was. They're going to wine and dine all the big schmucks around the globe. These globalists are coming to the state of Indiana. We are fully embracing them. You're like, man, what do you mean globalists? Oh, I don't know, like kind of like the Davos crew, like World Economic Forum, that guy that Klaus Schwab, you will own nothing and you will be happy. Oh, he's the guy that wants you to eat crickets and bugs and 3D meat, not eat actual bovine and pork. That's the guy. You're like, no, we don't have any attachment there. Then why in the world was Governor Holcomb a 5-time keynote speaker at the Davos, at the World Economic Forum forum, their conference, their international conference?
Mm-hmm.
I just wondered, how do you become a keynote speaker? Because they like it.
It's a puppet.
The governor from Illinois has never been a keynote speaker. But Holcomb has. And they're bringing them here because they state we are open for business to them. I submit to you, we're not open to business if you ask the people of the state of Indiana. I've been from Louisville up to Northwest Indiana. I've been from Fort Wayne down to Evansville, and I've yet to find one of we the people that say we want that kind of nonsense here in the state of Indiana.
Yes, right.
But I ask you this question. How did we get here legislatively? Let me introduce you to the Air Pollution Control Act of 1955. You're like, that's a federal act. Wait a second. We've got to go back to this. 1955. All we did was fund research for scope and sources of air pollution. Nothing to see here. I mean, you don't want to have air pollution now, do you? We're just funding research for scope and sources. In 1963, what we decided to do is we wanted to authorize development for a national program to discuss and address these things. And we authorized research into techniques to minimize the said air pollution we found in 1955. But then in 1967, then things really got real because after we figured out how to research techniques to minimize it, we authorized enforcement procedures for air pollution problems involving interstate transport. We finally got enforcement procedures. We put teeth to the law because we found out how terrible air pollution was, and we need to put teeth into the law as the U.S. government. It all started because it's just fun to research and scope. I mean, nothing to see here. 1970, we authorized the establishment of the National Ambient Air Quality Standards. They're called the NAAQS, is the colloquial phrase that they use to call them, and we established requirements for state implementation to achieve the National Ambient Air Quality Standards. I searched my Constitution. I Siri'd it, I Googled it, I DuckDuckGo'd it, and the wheels are still spinning. I'm trying to find out where the federal government has authority to tell the states that they have to follow that.
Right.
But they attach money to it. When you put money to it, everybody comes running. But I looked at it and I started reading the Constitution, the First Amendment, it talks about 5 different areas. It tells the government they can't. You can go through it. I skipped to the 10th Amendment. It says by and large, If it's not enumerated, that's written down. It's not written down in the Constitution, not enumerated in the Constitution. The rights go back to the states and the people. It's in the Constitution. It's in part of the Bill of Rights. So what that means, what we can do, is we can get a good state legislator to file a 10th Amendment bill and tell the federal government to go pound sand. You're like, now how do we do that? We have to craft a bill very carefully and tell them to go pound sand. Probably wouldn't use the word pound sand in it, but I will take you out to state dinner. State dinner because of the word pound sand. I would love that. But you get the point. Can we tell them? No, we can't tell them. Well, we're going to look at that here in a little bit. Well, the National Air Quality Standards, we follow it here in the state of Indiana. They follow it in Illinois. They follow it in Tennessee. They follow it in Kentucky. They follow it all over. And it's fighting against farmers. How do I know that it's fighting against farmers? Because the National Ambient Air Quality Standards follow the International Ambient Air Quality Standards. I don't think they're exactly known as the HIACs or whatever that would be, but they're the international standards. And New Zealand is trying to put a carbon price on cow farts and cow burps. We have a global methane imperative, and even Biden says that clean energy is a matter of national security. I don't know about you. I think of some other things. I don't know, maybe like sex trafficking might be a matter of national security, or maybe the porous border. I don't know. That might be of something of a little higher importance than cow releasing flatulence and us releasing flatulence. Yet they call this a matter of national emergency. And if we make this a matter of national security, now hold on one second. If we make this national security, which requires you to do this, so we might have to do the 17 million acres, and we might have to hand over our land by eminent domain. We're going to talk about House Bill 1209 for 2022 here in just a second. We're not getting out without talking about that one. And we take it by eminent domain, and then Communist Chinese Party gets to control it. They can take over the United States without a shot being fired. That sounds like a bigger matter of national security than cow farts.
Yep.
You say, what do you talked about the urbanization going to the LEAP project. It's already happening in China, friends.
Mm-hmm.
This global war on farmers in China, they're going through Agenda 2030 right now, and they are forcing over 250 million peasants off their farm into mega cities by 2026.
Oh my.
My friends, I don't want to become communist Chinese.
Nope.
I want to be an American. I believe in the constitutional republic. I believe that rights come from God, not from our government. If they don't come from government, they can't take them away. If they come from government, they can't take them away. We get our rights from Almighty God. They are unalienable. You're like, I pronounce it unalienable. I like the word unalienable because I think of the lien. If you go to the mechanic and you don't pay them, they can put a lien on your vehicle. If you go and get your roof done and you don't pay them, they can put a lien on your house. They have an attachment to your property. Our rights are unalienable. You can't attach nothing to our rights. You can't retract them one iota. They are ours from Almighty God. Yet they're trying to take them away in other places. And we're walking down the same path here in the United States of America. It's all over the world. In South Africa, I go back to this thing. I was in, I believe it was Clinton County, Indiana. And I was talking to some South African farmers. I said, man, you're a long way from home. What are you doing here? He said, sir, we want to stay alive. Stay alive? So they are executing our brethren because they're dirty farmers. I said, dirty farmers, do they not wash their John Deere tractor? They said, no. They're releasing gas as they go over, they till. Yeah, when you go and till, you release, gases. That's what happens, carbon dioxide, etc. I said, they're executing them? Yeah, because it's dirty farming. So they can't plant. There's South African farmers hiring security to keep them alive in their fields as they're planting corn and soybeans or whatever crop that they're planting. They come here to America for multiple months to earn money to send back to their families
in South Africa, to then go visit them from approximately November to March, give or take, to come back again. That's where Agenda 2030 takes us. They are following it even more than we are following. Sri Lanka, Canada, oh, that's Canada, our neighbors to the north. They put on a ban on nitrogen. Nitrogen is necessary for us to grow corn. The United States. The advancement and diffusion of knowledge is the only guardian of true liberty. I introduced you to a cabal. I use the term cabal because that's what Rockefeller. I talked about Bill Gates, I talked about BlackRock, but let me bring in the Rockefeller Foundation, who's also funding part of this. And this is directly from his memoirs, who says, some even believe we are part of a secret cabal working against the best interests of the United States, characterizing my family and me as internationalists and of conspiring with others around the world to build a more integrated global political and economic structure. A one world, if you will. If that's the charge, I stand guilty and I am proud of it. Doesn't sound like the kind of guy that I went over for Christmas dinner. Doesn't sound like he holds the same values that you and I hold. One nation under God. Yet he's funding. His foundation is funding this stuff along with others. I talked about the 10th Amendment. Has the 10th Amendment ever been utilized? Actually, it has been utilized across the United States, in Missouri, in Montana, and Arizona. There's been all sorts of places that they have gone and done it. State nullification, the 10th Amendment has been utilized. It's an idea deeply embedded. It's been utilized throughout American history. But we have to stand up and we have to tell the federal government, no. But you don't understand the billions of dollars that comes in from the federal government. How would we be able to operate without the bill? I don't know how are we going to operate with the billions of dollars. If they go and suck carbon dioxide out of the air, how long are you going to stay alive? Now that got real quick. Remember, they don't have any boundaries of how much CO2 they can suck out by a direct air capture. House Bill 1209. Let's get into that real quick. We're almost to the end. We're going to have a couple more slides and we'll have questions and answers. House Bill 1209 gives us 70%. So 70% of if the storage operator gets consent of the owners, there's 70%. There we go. There's 70% of the owners. Then they can use eminent domain in order to be able to steal away the property away from the other farmers, the other landowners. Because that's what eminent domain is. Oh, John, it's for the greater good. The greater good. So we take away property away from 30%. So we take the 70%. If they get to decide for the 30%, sounds like a democracy to me. Because a democracy is two wolves and a sheep deciding what's for dinner. 70% of the people get to decide for 100% of the people. I'm willing to negotiate on this. Then we get a bill signed up for this year, dropped to this year, filed for this year, and we can set it at 99%. I believe that's a statistical impossibility, so it's more or less 100%. Because the eminent domain is definitely not for usage of this area, because maybe there is a greater good that you could say is we need a road or we need something, but how is carbon sequestration going to help any of us? Because they told us so, because it's a matter of national security. It's because our country is sick, our world is sick. It's because we have too much carbon dioxide, we have too much methane, we have too much of these things. And we saw the video, remember that? It has a fever. So we have to, for the greater good, we have to take your property away from you. No, we need to change that. But that's being lauded by many. Well, that was a win. That's not a win for the government to take away something from us. But alas, I take you to the last part of the bill. It's there on the last page. It says once a certificate of completion is issued, the following occurs. Certificate of completion. I'm not going to bore you with all the details, but more or less, after they go in, they bury all the carbon dioxide injected into the ground. What they're going to do, they go and contact IEDM and IDM, and they go and they get a certificate of completion. They have to put so much concrete, blah 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 blah. With the state also put in there that they're going to get paid in a long-term fund. They're going to get paid per metric ton that's injected into the ground. The state is going to have a fund because then they're going to do, regulatory responsibility. So they need to have the money. The company's making money off of it. They have to pay the state because the state's going to be taking care of it long-term, and so the state needs money in case that there's a regulatory malfunction there. Got it, okay. Why does the state need to take over anything? It's my taxpayer dollars that's paying that private company, by the way. Why is a private company, it's like we're playing 2020 again. We're picking winners and losers all over again. Why does a private company, anyways, let's continue on. Read with me, I'm not trying to trip you up, read with me along this. The state will assume ownership of and responsibility for the storage facility. It's not a trick question. I just want to understand who now owns, who's the owner of the storage facility?
State.
The state, correct? And number one has now occurred. Once the certificate of completion is issued, the following occurs. The state, which by the way is us, will assume ownership of and responsibility of the storage facility. Perfect. We now know the state is now the owner of the storage facility. Number two, the state will assume responsibility for all regulatory requirements associated with the storage facility. Who's now responsible for the regulatory requirements?
The state.
State. I guess they have to take ownership. One lawyer explained to me, well, when you assume ownership, you're not assuming regulatory responsibility. You have to have this legalese in there in order to do it. I said, I get it. So we've now assumed ownership of the storage facility, and the state will assume responsibility for all regulatory. And the storage operator and the owner of the storage facility, now hold on a second. The owner of the storage facility is released from responsibility, and the state's the owner. Now, who's in charge? Who's on first?
Yeah.
I don't, you know where we're headed? The state's now the owner. The state's now the responsible one, and in the same sentence, the owner, which they've established in number one, is now released from the responsibility. Who's left holding the bag? You're like, John. Talked to several lawyers, and they're like, this vague language is a lawyer's paradise.
Mm-hmm.
We get to play hot potato, not mine, not mine, not mine, not mine, not mine. And the person left holding the bag is the landowner.
Mm.
I take you to southern Indiana, Santa Claus, Indiana area. Spencer County. Solar USA came in. It's an illustration of who's left holding the bag. Solar USA came in, they started installing solar panels. And they went belly. They had the GC, the general contractor. They had hired subcontractors. Subcontractors had done work and they had not been paid for it. So the subcontractors go, we should get paid for this. And I agree, they should. They did work. They should be worthy of getting payment. But they can't go file a grievance or a cause of action against the company that's now belly up. Who are they left with? There's a $9.9 million lien against the properties of the solar panel owners.
Wow.
They're left holding the back. I presented this to an Indiana senator at Loftmiller, was down on the south side of the Capitol complex, and we were sitting over there in the corner. As you walk in, Loftmiller was right over there on the corner, and I presented it to the senator, and I won't quote him as he said it, I'll have to believe him. And he goes, holy bleep! He goes, this must have been the introduced bill. We would have taken that out of House Bill 1209. So no, sir, this is the final draft, passed into law, sitting in Indiana state law as we speak. I was just given a BP land use agreement that talks about the fact that they want to put the carbon dioxide in the ground and take it back out of the ground. And it's strange, we were just looking back over 1209 today, and it states is that it's not for reintroduction of carbon dioxide back into the ground. This bill does not cover that. Man, a massive loophole that must have been lobbied for by some paid lobbyists.
It was strange who was lobbying for 1209 in 2022. I found it very strange. Did you know that Indiana Farm Bureau, the state level Farm Bureau, lobbied for this bill?
Why?
There are those that are telling me, oh no, behind the bill. Except for the fact that I was talking to a good state senator about a different bill, and I got interrupted by their paid lobbyist that said to vote for House Bill 1209. Because we're lobbying for it. Except for the fact that they lobbied with White County farmers, Warren County farmers, Fountain County farmers, Clinton County farmers, Jasper County farmers, Benton County farmers, Newton County farmers, Vermilion County farmers, and Park County farmers, who've all personally told me from their mouth to my ears, we were called upon in order to lobby for House Bill 1209. I submit to you, if you're embarrassed about the bill, just come out and tell us you're embarrassed. I've done the same thing. I've messed up. Man up and do it. But when I look at your campaign finance reports and you're being funded by renewable energies, I can understand why you need to keep silent. But you know what? I've made mistakes too. All I'm looking for is for us to be men. And I'm not meaning that in a sexist way. Be people of our word.
Mm-hmm.
You messed up? Oops. I've done a lot of oopses. You can ask my wife. Plenty of them. She lets me know about them. I'm not saying I'm not picking on her. I'm saying is just say I was wrong. I have to do it too. You say, well, well, John, who all voted for it? Well, we can look at that. That's not what we're looking at tonight. We can look that up. We can talk to those people about it. Maybe they shouldn't have. Maybe they were told to vote for it in caucus. I don't know. But maybe we could get somebody that would say, is, you know what? I see a problem with it, and I'm willing to take a step out. But I'll tell you, we're going to have to be down there in mass in order to give them the support in order to get over these paid lobbyists.
Yep.
Because, boy, I've been down there. Down at the State House. The numbers, the paid lobbyists down there, it's insane. Green energy bill, green energy bill, green energy bill. They're coming down there asking for more solar panels.
Vaccines.
Number of solar panels, 6,700 acres in Fountain County, Indiana, popping up all over our fertile farmland. I ask this question, how are our legislators doing? Well, we created legislative scorecards. What are we looking at? What are we comparing them against? The Constitution, pro-America. That's what we're looking at. And the numbers are what they are. You say, where is this available? You go to Freedom Index, and you can find it.
Go to where?
And we need you at the State House.
Where did you say to go to find that?
Freedom Index.
Freedom Index. Okay.
And we can give you a state legislative scorecard. What are they meant for? A conversation piece. What I learned in the United States Marine Corps, what I learned in management, is that you inspect what you expect. Maybe the term like is a harsh term. I'll utilize it, but I don't mean it in a harsh way. I like, there's an ease, maybe that's a better term, throwing stones at politicians. They do such public things. Everything they do is public record. You know, they make a speech, it's public record. They file a bill, it's public record. Their votes, public record, public record. And many times we go and we cast stones at them because they live in ivory palaces and glass houses. You know what? I don't know that it's the state legislature's fault. Because I look at the number of people that don't show up to the State House in order to get involved in their government. I go and look at a county government that passes a county budget, and they go and have an $18 million budget in a county, and exactly 0 people show up in order to have anything to say about that county budget. I look at the multi-billion-dollar budget of the state of Indiana and the limited number of people that show up besides paid lobbyists
to go and lobby for the money that they want to go to their companies that they're going for, that they're lobbying for, and the number of citizen lobbyists, the lack of citizen lobbyists that are down there is astonishing. We go and have Senate Bill 1 from Special Session 2022 dealing with the life issue. And the number of people that don't show up, whatever side you're on, I'm not saying which side you're supposed to be on, but the number of people that don't show up, no matter what side that they are on, is astonishing, and it's disappointing. You're like, so what are you saying? I am laying it at the feet of the people of the state of Indiana. If you don't want this to happen, if you want to see a change in the state of Indiana, get your hiney down to the State House and start testifying at committee hearings in the state of Indiana.
Yes. Platforming.
Then, and only then, am I willing to have you come out and say anything against the state legislature. Because if you ain't been involved, I don't want to hear nothing from you. You're like, well, I have been involved. I voted. Sorry, big look. You're like, wow. Where is this guy going? Indiana Constitution reads that the power is inherent in the people of the state of Indiana. But we don't go down to the State House. The government inherits its power from us, we the people.
Mm-hmm.
We heave it to them. We go into the ballot, to the booth, and we go and select who we're voting for state reps, senator, county commissioner, governor. We've been involved. No. Do you communicate with your state legislators, senator, representative, commissioners? Or do you just vote for them and say, I'll see you at the next campaign? It's a lot of introspection we as the people say. We have fallen asleep at the switch. That's an old railroad term. There's a switch that had to be hit every so often in order to keep the engine running by the conductor, by the engine operator. And we as the people of the state of Indiana haven't touched the switch of government for far too long. You're like, John, what are you trying to say? On January the 9th, we're going to have some good speakers. That's not where the magic happens. It's you getting an appointment with your state legislator, having a conversation. Hey, Madam Senator, Madam Representative, Mr. Senator, Mr. Representative, this is where I'm looking at. This is what I am looking for. Doing this. You say simple conversation. I don't know why we always need to have a modifier for the word conversation. Let's go ahead and get this out in front. Somebody that goes down to the State House and has their head on spin and has slobber coming out of their mouth is insane. It's not what we're talking about. We're talking about bona fide, red-blooded American citizens that have sense about them. Sit down across the table, have a cup of coffee or a Pepsi or whatever, and have a conversation with them. It's shocking. It would shock you the number of people that don't connect. That's what we're right here.
Mm-hmm.
For you. We'll have speakers. We'll have between 12 and 1. We can sing songs. We can sing a patriotic song. Probably sing a gospel song because I'm a preacher and then I get to choose those things. But what I need you to do is to go down and talk. Madam Senator, Madam Representative, whatever it may be. Hey, you know that they will rectify these wrongs that have been identified. It's going to have to be a good bill. So a lot of little things need to change. One being repealing 1209. This has got to change. Because right now, running the state of Indiana, running farmland of the state of Indiana, is state law. If we don't change it, they can legally do it. It's not where I want to be. I don't know about you. would you come out to the legislative action, 2024, 11 a.m., being told by buses coming from Jasper, from Evansville, from other places, get there early. On the second floor, you walk in, walk through security, you walk to your left, and be there. But before you come, call your the legislative assistant of your legislator and set up an appointment with them for that. Questions you may have. Anybody have questions this evening? Man,
I got one.
Yes, sir.
You said, get behind somebody that changed it. Have you got somebody in mind? I mean, I think probably everybody here knew Holcomb was not going to do anything for us from the get-go.
You say, do I have someone in mind in order to change this? Well, Holcomb is not the only problem.
But I mean, the state of Indiana, you said it can come back to the states. Holcomb's like where the buck stops, right, for the state of Indiana?
Holcomb is the executive of it, but in order to have a 10th Amendment bill, we need to get we need to have enough action inside of political momentum inside of the state legislature to file these things inside the House and or Senate in order to get it through, in order to nullify these things. It has to go and get passed by the House and Senate and then go to the governor's desk. So then we're going to have to lobby the governor in order to sign it into law.
Hey, John, as questions are asked, can you repeat the questions so everybody can get questions?
Oh,
Repeat the
okay.
answers to questions.
Perfect. Question was, who do we need to get behind in order to get these things stopped? So yes, the governor has some things that he can do as far as executive action, but we have laws that need to be changed in order to be able to fix this. The law about the three people, the finance authority that can be able to change any appropriation, give it to any economic development corporation, doesn't come out of his office. It starts inside of the Indiana legislature. So we need somebody to be able to file that bill. Currently, we have in the state of Indiana, they've been told, I've been told by several, is that the House and Senate leadership have told them they can only have 5 bills. It's not a constitutional thing. It's just a matter of ease. They don't want to have that many bills. It's a short session. I think this is a matter that we need to be able to sit down. We need to shepherd this through from the highest of levels. Senate leadership and House leadership need to get behind us, and we need to get it through. It can be. It's not a matter of we can't do it. I've heard, we can't do it. Actually, it's coming down to we don't want to. It's not. It's like my kids. Well, Dad, I can't eat my broccoli. Well, actually, you can. You put your fork in and you put it in your mouth, you chew and you swallow. It's that not that you can't, it's that you won't. It's a little different of a word, but a lot of difference in meaning. Other questions you might have? Sir, right there in the
do we have attorneys that are fighting this right now in Indiana?
So we're going to be getting up, the question was, we have a summary of the presentation. If you go to Radical Pulpit, RADICALPULPIT, radicalpulpit.com, we've just got access to that. We're going to be getting more and more things up there. We've got the library of information. As we get time in order to get that up there, if you go to that, it's United Citizens, and we're going to start filling that in. So the question, the answer to the question is yes and no. We're growing this momentum. We're getting into other states as well, because this is not just the state of Indiana. We've been invited into Michigan, Minnesota, Illinois, Kentucky, Tennessee has contacted me, and I was just notified that I may be going to the state of Washington again in order to, because this is a national thing, so we're going to get more information up in order to stop this across the United States. Does that answer your? You get on there, Radical Pulpit, you got my phone number there on Radical Pulpit, you can, I might love to, give a presentation on it. Somebody else behind you had a question? Yes, sir, in the back behind you there.
I appreciate your enthusiasm. Yeah, a little bit of information. I worked with Farm Bureau for a long time. And 1209 established a couple things that did not exist before. It's not perfect. But with carbon sequestration starting, the one on the west side in County, they were drilling. And they were going to drill without any payment to landowners or any recognition that landowners own any rights. Without that bill, there would have been no rights and no payments to any landowner other than for the well so that was something new that was being done. And so that's why that bill resulted in that. The 70%, and I get your point, I'd rather it be 100%. But the 70% was to put a threshold in that would say, at least most of the people, 70% is the majority of those landowners in that area where it was restored would be supported. And so that was the threshold. I'm not saying it was perfect, but without the bill, they were drilling, they were going to do that, and landowners had no recognition of giving them all those storage units for under your land. That's what it is.
So 1209, what you're talking about, the statement was that 1209 established some things. Yes, also 1209 in 2022 did establish a core space and middle space, established what the terminology in our state code was. That is correct. So we established what the meanings of those.
And that's value that is paid money.
Because we established what it was. Before there was no definition of.
You get nothing without that bill.
So on that. So then we go and get this in here. So we have quote unquote a good thing. So as we, but we have some bad things on that. You said it's not perfect. I would agree. So then getting this repealed out of this and getting this changed and getting, why do we need to have eminent domain for something that's dangerous when we say that it's for the better, for the better good, for the, that will increase good for the community. This is not going to increase good for the community. So with the eminent domain, so then we go and repeal the 70% and put it at a very high threshold because we don't want carbon sequestration in the state of Indiana to poison our groundwater on that. We don't need carbon sequestration.
Great. I'm not supporting the carbon sequestration here, but it's here, and the point is reading here and what's going to happen on the west side. The reason what's going to happen is because of all those government funds. That's the only thing that's generating this, but it is there, and it has to be done.
But 1209 only covers 90 counties. 92, two counties are carved out because of what happened in 2018 and 2019 by the pilot project on that. So some of 1209 does affect the two counties of Million Vega, but it does not largely affect that. That what brought carbon sequestration in was for the other 90 counties, the only ones that were allowed. So you say we don't want it. I get your point. So in order to not have it, we have to go down to the state house as we the people. We have to go and educate the legislators that they have to have enough momentum, they have to have enough political fuel from we the people instead of the paid lobbyists, that they have the knowledge that this is not going to happen without, we're going to be paying attention to this. Well, let's look at who's going to be willing to be the champion of this. It's high time that we have a state legislator that's going to be the champion of this and listen to we the people of the state of Indiana. Quit listening to the paid lobbyists.
Amen.
They're not representing the people of Indiana. So then we go through and we can't stop it. Well, all we have to say is shall not. That's all that has to be said. It's wording like that. What they're looking at right now, there's two legislators that are looking at what they're saying in public meetings is they're looking at regulating the amount of water from Lafayette to Lebanon, Indiana for the leak project. Regulating. They're going to put a throttle on it. I'm not looking for a throttle on the amount of water. I don't want any water taken from Lafayette down to Lebanon, Indiana.
Mm-hmm.
We need to have a kill switch on it. It stops. It shall not happen. That's the wording that we have to fight on. Somebody had a question over here.
That was very similar. It was just that House bill was put in place so that landowners, farmers, whoever was there could technically be paid for whatever was being captured or protecting the surrounding landowners. It had to all be on the same page. 70% of us had to be.
70%.
Is there another opportunity? If that bill's already done, you're saying that our only option now is to come down and to get that repealed. Isn't there another option on the table to slow the progression of this coming? I mean, I have no idea. I mean, I knew what carbon sequestration was, but I'm going to make an assumption that the majority of residents or citizens in the state of Indiana have no idea what this is or the consequences of it if something goes wrong. So rather than us just giving those that are different than solar, if you're signing up for that, the opportunity to get a payment. What is our opportunity or our options to educate the regular citizen?
Mm-hmm.
How do we
There
go
has
around
to,
this
has to
again?
be something else. This bill's already passed. Rather than just repealing this one, is there another bill that could be put onto the table that could?
So the process in order to get this, it was gonna take a bill in 2024, it's gonna have to be filed, it's gonna have to go in and going to take in and go and change the wording. So if you go to Senate Bill 35, which is a technical corrections bill, it's 499 pages this year. And it goes through all sorts of IC codes. And if it's crossed out, they're taking it out. If it's in bold, it's new language that's being put in there. And so they're going through. So that's what we're going to have to do. That's the process upon which we go and be able to get these things changed. So we have to go in and go into the IC code that House Bill 1209 affected, and we have to change the 70% to 100%. We have to go into shall not, and we have to craft language in order to make that this does not come to the state of Indiana. What other options do we have? Well, right now, we can't stop it at the county level for carbon sequestration. For solar, we have to go through the IC, I think it's 36, Title 36, we have to go through, it has to go through the planning commission and the BZA, it has to meet 4 different requirements for property values, for health, safety, and things like that. We can have ordinances that are on the thing. What we need to have is a more clear path to cut off this enemy that's encroaching in on our fertile farmland so that we can have farm, we can have food, and we don't disrupt the food, and we don't have a food shortage. We have to be able to have that. If we're going to get to a point that we're going to have a crossover point where we don't have enough land usage, or it's going to be poisoned, or it's going to be dried up because there's so many leak projects, battery projects. They just signed for a battery plant in Jeffersonville, and they're going to be sucking something million gallons of water a day in Jeffersonville. Kokomo is sucking 1.8 million gallons of water a day out of an aquifer, and we're trying to get more of these things. We're going to be having a water crisis that's going to be looming in front of us. Well, let's get in front of it in 2024. Let's go ahead and take care of this problem so that we stop it, not regulate. We have to come to a point that it has to be stopped. You can say, well, the legislators were telling me, well, we can't stop the leak project. Why can't? Somebody told me that it's wildly insane what might happen if we open up a state law. Really? I'm not saying you said it. When I say really, I look at you, I'm not accusing you. They say is when you open up a state law, it's insane what may happen. Do you understand that's what state legislators do every legislative session? Literally, that's their job. They write a bill, it opens up the state law, because here's the process. The legislator, Senator, use my military, Senator Schmuckatelli goes to file a bill. Schmuckatelli is that, catch-all term we use in the Marine Corps. Senator Schmuckatelli goes and files a bill for IC4. Well, then it goes through first reading. It gets assigned to a committee. They're going to sling it over to the committee of committees, whatever it's called. Then they go and they have the committee there. They can go and modify it. They can amend it in the committee. It comes out of the committee, and then it goes for second reading. You can get more amendments. That's what every bill goes through.
Mm-hmm.
So every bill is wildly insane what may happen to the bill of any bill. I take IC 35. It touches so many stinking doggone codes. Can you only imagine what we could do? Well, that's why we have to be involved as we the people. We've got to watch through every avenue of it. You're like, do you not trust the government? No, I'm of the opinion of it's one of the craziest words that we've ever heard. I don't remember how many it is. Hi, I'm from the government. I'm here to help. Those are some of the scariest words.
Yep.
It's not that I don't trust the person, but I individually, but I understand where we have gone from, and the changes. So how do we go about doing it? I don't know of another option other than stopping it. And then we have to go back to the drawing board. How do we have? Why are we taking coal-fired plants offline? Power plants going offline in 25, 26. Why? Because carbon dioxide is considered a pollutant. Is nuclear a better option? Let's look at it. This crazy stuff is not. Does that answer your question? I'm sorry for the line.
Somewhat, yeah.
Other big questions?
Yes, ma'am.
As far as this carbon and the pressure, is there anything like, is there a danger with the fault lines going through the
Is there
mandate?
danger with the fault lines and the pressure that they
Yes.
are going to put it into the ground at? I would see some dangers myself. I mean, if we're going to have dissolving sandstone, what can
Yes.
shift and what can move? Does it affect the New Madrid fault line that runs up and down more or less 41, US 41 from the north of Indiana to the southern part of Indiana? More or less, that's the line to the New Madrid fault line. I don't know that it does or it doesn't, but I just wonder if you go and dissolve a whole big section of sandstone, you know, what kind of holes will it create?
Right.
Sinkholes. If we go to Footsland, Illinois, which is northwest of Champaign by about 12 miles, there from Champaign, Illinois, they buried natural gas into the Mount Simon sandstone geologic structure, and it seeped back through and affected the Mahama aquifer because the capstone is very porous. So you talk about potential dangers. Remember, the research gave all these different areas. It's known across, when I'm talking to geologists here in this area, the Mount Simon sandstone geologic structures, capstone is known to be porous in this area, but that's where we're headed. Is it going to affect the fault line? I could see some potential, but I also see some other dangers that are out there as well. Does that answer your question?
Yes. And do we have a group of attorneys working on this right now?
We do have some attorneys that
Okay.
are looking at this in order to be able to get a bill.
Good.
You know, we've got people that are, we've got others, the professionals that are working alongside in order to be able to, how do we mitigate this? One concern, I was talking to a fire department in the state of Illinois, and they were talking about, well, what happens if they inject in our area and there's a rupture of the pipeline? So they asked the Illinois Fire Service Institute or something to that effect. They said, are we getting training on this? And they said, the guy's like, no training on the pipeline rupture. I said, what do? Old fashioned, if I can see, if I can't block it out with my thumb, I mean, it's like a fire extinguisher. If one of those things go up, where carbon dioxide is, there is no oxygen. People die instantaneously. It's dangerous stuff. You've got to have the training. Another bill that we have to have in order to talk about this, in order to change, you know, if we're going to do this. We don't need to do this. This is probably insane. Is that answer your question?
Thank you.
I think you have.
What'd you say the name of that aquifer was?
The Taze River Aquifer, is that the one you're talking about? Taze River, T-E-A-Y-S. What was the name of the aquifer? Are you talking about the one that's pumping water out of? Yeah, that's Taze River Aquifer.
I'd like to see their numbers because I retired from Yorktown, was a lot of people. We drilled a well off the pumped it for, we supposed to have a pump for 24 hours. 1,000 gallons a minute, pumped for 750, and a mile south of there, it was 2 wells dry. Now, the recharge on one was so slow that it took completely to the next day to recharge. The other one, the town had to go in, I knew well, first minute, it was never back.
Wow.
I can't see them pulling that much water anywhere in the state without the surrounding towns suffering. I just can't see it.
Right.
So
I'd like to know who a guy can talk to with IM.
the question slash statement.
All our towns surrounding the middle suffer.
So the question slash statement, so I can reiterate for people that might not have ever heard is, what was the name of the aquifer? And you don't see that they're going to be able to suck that amount of water out of that aquifer without affecting other places. I didn't go into depth into it during my presentation about the problems that when they suck the 1 million gallons of water out those 3 days, we're talking 8 miles away, that people's water heaters were filled with gravel. People's, it affected quite a few wells that they went dry. I mean, and that was just 1 million gallons, 1% caused 8 miles away.
Oh,
damage.
my word.
1 million gallons, 1%.
That recharge they're talking about,
Yes.
if you get 3 inches of rain right here today,
Yes.
it won't affect that water, that static water level whatsoever
Correct.
in that well. It
So-
takes slow seeping rains and snow.
So we have, one of the people is Friendly Brothers Well Drilling, or Finley Well Drilling from Lafayette. He's he's drilled like all of the city wells from West Lafayette, New York. He's and he's like, the numbers don't add up, as you just said. He goes, I can't drill that well in good conscience. My insurance company would not cover me if I had these numbers for doing this. That's got to tell us something, folks.
But alas, we have the funding from the federal government. That's why we gotta stop it at the state.
Right.
Yeah,
I've got a question on the credits.
Carbon credits?
It seems like it's being pushed and through corporate with like Land Lakes, Alliance, RDO. Are they gonna get these tied together to control our financing and where we sell products?
Mm-hmm.
So the question is about carbon credits. You then mentioned a couple of companies and, on that, and then you ended it. Can you say that last part? What was your final part of the question?
Is the government gonna try to get this tied where if we don't comply, will you not be able to get financing, will you not be able to sell your
Oh, yeah.
crops?
So the state of Illinois, so will we not be able to get financing, we will not be able to sell crops if we don't have with all the carbon credits and things like that. State of Illinois, I'll utilize them first, and then I'll come to the state of Indiana. They just sent out for their carbon mapping, which is part of getting carbon credits through those companies that you mentioned there. They said that they wanted to know how many acres you have, what kind of crops you have, what do you use, how far do you farm into the land, how far do you disc or till up the land, how many inches down, and things like that. A lot of invasive questions. Some might surmise then they have a lot of information for them to be able to do it in order to be able to possibly at a point use it as a choke point against you. Yes, I can see that possibility. Here in the state of Indiana, in west central Indiana, there was a farmer that was unable to get their fertilizer for 2023. This was back in 2022. He always buys his fertilizer a year early because he didn't fill out the carbon footprint paperwork. Because the company said this is of such importance, we want to be known as a carbon neutral company. The Securities Exchange Commission has a new rule that states is the upline and the downline of each company that's an SEC company, so that's a globally traded, nationally traded company. They have to have a report showing how of their upline and their downline if they are carbon neutral or not. And they can be penalized if they are not. So to your point, I think we have the infrastructure, if you will, legally. Yes, has it happened yet? And I've not seen it fully happen. They did acquiesce to him and give him his fertilizer. A company on the south side of Indianapolis, another company was sent by an international company that they are trying to become carbon neutral, and they are looking that this could cause their contract with this company in Indiana to cease and desist if they did not fill out their carbon neutral paperwork. They're starting to do it because they're getting global pressure from all of these places. Is it happening widespread across the state of Indiana? No, not yet. Do we have the things in place? We talked about Agenda 3030 at the very beginning. They were voting, today is the 3rd. Yesterday they were voting, the SEC was voting on creating the company, which was the holdings company for the land that's going to be in conservation. I don't know the vote on that, but they were working towards all of those. Does that, you see where I'm heading with that? Any other questions, real quick? So you say, where do we go forward? Right there, back. Yes, sir.
Not really a question, just if you farm, you know where it looks like you go through, like good reference to see all that stuff. Up there. Basically I got it, sorry. If you farm, check out 45Z, Stove 3, that's the farmer portion of the supply chain for the ethanol plants. They're all going to do on tapping into this carbon pipeline. Ship it all out to the frac. Both right and left have kind of a way to monetize the situation.
It's all about money. So you said, where do we go forward on this? What I've experienced is a lot of people say, wow, that was like drinking from a fire hose. I apologize. I'm trying to give you a lot of good information, and I know it's at a rapid rate. What everybody said is, well, what do we need to do? Well, we got to do the Farmland Legislative Action Day, but then we're going to have to get more people, how do we educate people? I think was the question several people had. We're going to have multiple of these meetings. How do I go about having these meetings? I don't charge for having these meetings. For those that are out there saying that I'm making $5,000 per event, no, I'm not.
I do ask the people that help out with covering gas. If you want to be able to have a meeting, you say, I've got 8 people that will meet with you at lunch. You call me, you get my number off radicalpulpit.com, 865-635-9558, and you can call me and you can say, I want to schedule a meeting. We'll do the same thing. We'll come over, we'll have a meeting together, and we will get together and we will have that discussion. You say, where can I find a lot of this information? I know of no other better source than the John Burke Society. You can sign up in order to get this information. We've been talking about this. We were the first national organization that started talking about Agenda 21 in 1992. We had 2 reporters there in 1992. We started sounding the alert. It's here. It's available. You can get that. Thank you so much for coming, and you have a blessed evening.